The average sales engineer in the US makes $140,000 a year, and the average bonus of a sales engineer is about $30,000. And get this, about 87% of all sales engineers report that they get a bonus every single year. So that means that on average, your salary as a sales engineer can easily reach almost $200,000 a year. And that's amazing. As a software engineer, I don't even make that. But I also don't think that being a sales engineer is the right role for me. So if that's a question that you're wondering as well, or if you're just looking to learn more about what being a sales engineer in tech means, then make sure you watch this video all the way through because I'll be sitting down with my friend Justin, who's been working as a sales engineer for the past 6 to 7 years. And he came from a non-tech background as well. Matter of fact, me and Justin actually started our tech careers at the same time at the same company. We just had two different roles. So this is going to be a very fun interview. And if you're new here, my name is TJ, and I'm a self-taught software engineer that mentors beginners on their coding journey while sharing stories from my experiences in tech to help you learn more about the industry. So as you're watching this video, make sure you comment down any questions that you have, and I'll get Justin to answer them all. So enjoy the interview.
Yeah, so my name is Justin Moss. My role is a senior sales engineer for a company called Axonius. It's a startup based out of New York.
Oh, that's cool. And what exactly is a sales engineer? Like, I know a lot of people have seen this term just floating around on the webs. Like, what is a sales engineer?
So if you look up what a sales engineer is, it's going to be, like you just called out, kind of hard to understand exactly what it is because they always give you technical requirements as to what you're supposed to be doing. But if I were to just distill it from like unconventional, wisdom, a sales engineer is somebody who can embody three characteristics that I feel like I and also a lot of people that I work with do. They can storytell, they can educate, and also they can actively listen to customers, to their peers, and then they use those skills to be able to what we call demonstrations or product demonstrations, explain how a product should work. And that's at a high level. That's really what we focus on, the characteristics. If you still or you're the storytell, educate, actively listen, and then you can also use those characteristics to be able to explain how products work.
Explain how the product work. So those skills sound like soft skills that kind of speak to the sales part of that sales engineer term. What do you do at work that kind of relates more so to the engineer part?
Yeah. So on the engineer side, if I were to break up the sales engineer role into percentages, it's more 60-40, 60% more sales and then 40% engineer. That's also a misconception that I think a lot of people have whenever they look up what a sales engineer is. In sales engineering, the role, it exists in different industries and, different markets. So that's where if you look online and you look at a specific role, it could seem like it's a bit more technical than most, but pulling back all the layers, 60% sales, 40% engineering. And the technical piece comes in your ability to explain how the product works. So think about this. Let's just say we were to be at a car dealership and you walk into that car dealership and you see that person who's waving you down, they're eyeing you, right? That's a typical car salesman. So you walk in, that person, that salesman, saleswoman is going to ask you, what are you in for? What are you looking for? What's your style? What brings you in? They're going to gather that information and understand really the why behind the car that you're looking to purchase. And then once they get you into the point where they can point you in the direction of the car you want based on your description, they sit you in the car, you're sitting with a salesperson, and then they're going to tell you all about the why. Maybe you have questions about how things work. So to bridge that gap, instead of in a typical test drive scenario where you sit in the car and the salesperson is sitting beside you, trying to, hey, look at this screen, it's big and it's cool, it has all these features. You may be asking questions like, well, if I were to press the brake because I'm going 30 miles or 200 miles per hour, like how fast am I going to be able to, brake this car? What kind of brakes are being made with this car? And how can I like confirm and have validation that they're made with, the right products to give me the safety that I need for me and my family? So instead of you asking the car salesman, in this scenario where you're test driving the car, there's like, a mechanic in the back for you. And they're the ones who that you would ask, or your sales engineer who you would ask the how questions to. So your account executive is the person who's going to give you all of your traditional why answers. And then your sales engineer is going to help you understand how these things work. So when you ask that question around, okay, cool, the brakes look nice, but how do I know what kind of material is it made out of, and what's going to be my return on investment for the amount of miles that I'm driving on a daily basis? The sales engineer will be the one to help you explain the technical pieces behind how that piece works, and give a bit more business value as to why it's beneficial for you as well, which is why you have sales engineering technical, but also you land it back on the sales piece to help them understand the values for them long term.
I see. So like how do you go about understanding the technical aspect? Because it basically seems like a big part of your role is you being able to explain technical concepts to non-technical people.
100%.
Right.
So there are different routes that you can take. Some jobs require you to have, or they recommend that you have some type of engineering degree, biomechanical engineer, some kind of engineering degree that allows you to study heavily in mathematics, and then you can apply those learnings to whatever technology it is. Or you are in a field where they're requiring some kind of certification, and that was my own personal experience.
Okay.
I didn't necessarily need a degree, and I had an opportunity to learn a lot about the field specifically through certifications, which are specialized, exams and study guides and things like that. And that's, two of the few ways that I see a lot of people coming into the field from that perspective: the degree, certifications. And then the last thing I've seen people do who transition into the sales engineering role, because there's no one sure path to become a sales engineer. You either know someone who is one, or out of college you just fall into it by accident or whatnot. But the other piece is people who have worked they were analysts, or they were working in the field, and they were on the side where they were purchasing products, and then they got sold to by a sales engineer. So they felt that, okay, this is kind of this is interesting. I would like to get from behind the computer and now start talking about these products that I enjoy using so much, so I can help other people find the value that I found in these products as well.
I see. So you don't need to learn how to code to be a sales engineer.
100%. That's another, I wouldn't say a big myth. I don't know if anyone thinks you have to become a coder or a developer to become a sales engineer, but you do not have to know how to code to do the job as a sales engineer. That's right.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so I think at times anytime someone hears the term engineer somewhere, they just kind of start thinking about programming as well, coding. So I will say anytime that I hear sales, I start getting a bit anxious and a bit nervous and scared, because in my head, I just picture me like doing like cold calls, etc. Like trying to win like actual sale. Like for the people with a sales background, like where does this fit in the whole kind of sales cycle?
Yeah. So a really good question. So in the world of technical sales, there's so many different avenues that anybody can go into, and there are different levels, entry, and also, mid and, experience. And there's just, in those different levels, there's also just different like segments that you can dive into. So you don't have to start out as one of the lowest tiers, which will be called a business development rep or a sales development rep. These are called BDRs or SDRs. I did air quotes around the lowest only because you typically do have a lot of folks who are fresh out of college applying and getting the opportunity to get that role. But those are the ones that are paving hitting the phones, making the outbound calls, or receiving warm leads from the website, and then following up with the prospect to say, hey, let me set you a meeting. That's one route. Another route, or a natural progression from BDR to SDR, is going to be an account executive, or regional sales manager, depending on how you slice and dice it. These are the folks who are receiving those warm leads from that BDR, that SDR, to then start, taking the meeting. So if we just kind of go back into the cycle, a customer finds, maybe they hear about your company on a webinar, or they're attending some kind of conference or something like that, and they're interested. They go to your website, or maybe you scan their badge or something like that, and they go to your website and they sign up for what you would call a demonstration of how the product would work. They see that there's some kind of value. the BDR or the SDR would then reach out to that prospect to say, great, I see that you found some value in this. Let me go ahead and get you connected with my account executive, my why person. And then they will pass you over to the account executive who will take that meeting. That meeting will then start, and the account executive will talk more about the why. Why do you care about this? What's important behind from that perspective? And once the customer starts asking those technical questions around, like, okay, I get the why. I see, that this is a product that could fit, or a solution that could fit my company. But how do I have confidence, and how can I validate what you're saying? Because whenever it comes to this, most people interacting with salespeople, they don't know what they can trust or whatnot. So that's where you bring in the sales engineer for us to bring that level of credibility to say, not only are we talking about the why, but let's now give you some more tangibles and credibility around, or credentials around, the how it works.
Okay.
So go ahead and sell that deal.
Okay. So you haven't always been a sales engineer. What were you doing before that?
So before, I did a handful of retail sales. I used to even work at I had a short stint at KFC, which is probably the most interesting 4 days of my life.
Oh, 4 days? Wow. Okay.
A whole 4 days. And I actually stopped on a 2-piece Tuesday, man. It was
2-piece. I mean, before you left, did you at least get a 2-piece?
I did, man. And I saw how they were being made. So that's why.
Oh, that's why you left? Oh God. Okay.
That's not why I left. It was a great time. It was a good experience, but
Okay,
it was yeah. But outside of that, jumping from places like KFC, then I worked at a company called Spectrum now. It's called was Time Warner Cable, and I was in the retention department. So I was there for about 2 years, and what I learned from that experience was getting a chance to talk to many different people, different backgrounds, ethnicities, and also just their geographical, communication style. And I was the guy that you would call in, or you'd say, hey, my bill just raised, or something's going on, right? I want to cancel my cable.
I've probably talked to you before.
You probably have. Maybe threw me a couple of choice words, right, while you're politely letting me know to cancel the cable. But I was a dude that was like, nah, I'm not going to let you cancel it. Then sold you HBO on top of that. So customer service is really my background before I became a sales engineer.
Okay, that's cool. Can you kind of walk us through your journey from going from customer service to sales engineer?
Yeah. So this is, just this personal experience. Again, there's no one sure way to become a sales engineer, but I'm definitely want to do my best to help everyone to see the, traditional paths. But mine is pretty unique. Fortunately, well, I say fortunately, interestingly enough, I had my father-in-law. He owned a startup we know about.
Hey, so quick note. So me and Justin both started our careers in tech pretty much at the same company. The very same day is when we met. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. So yeah,
crazy.
Shout out to Marcus, ThreatCare, and Marcus's interview is actually coming up as well. I was able to interview Marcus when I went to Austin. But anyways, yeah, sorry, the floor is yours.
Nice. A perfect segue. I just remember pulling up to the, to the little
office, and then to the old startup house.
and seeing you pull up, and I was like, oh, who's this guy right here? And we're discussing, trying to figure out where do we fit in, what's going to be our roles and stuff like that. Yeah, that was a great time. But so, mentor / father-in-law. Funny enough, how I ended up there, right? I think it gives a little bit more weight to the story. So maybe about a year ago, he knew that I was interested in chess, and I was just really, really interested in chess. I've always wanted to learn that game. It was a bucket list item of mine. And
chess?
Then chess, yeah.
That's cool. I'm an avid checkers player, but yeah.
Ain't nothing wrong with that, man. You work your way up. That's okay.
Gotta work my way up. All right. And I caught that, but we'll keep going. Hey, side note, you still haven't beat me in one-on-one basketball. So, yeah, I know. Sorry about that.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, we'll come back and revisit that.
Yeah. We'll come back to that.
All right. So I wanted to learn the game of chess, and my grandfather we were over at Marcus's house, and he was teaching me the game and stuff like that. My grandfather, he's a grandmaster. He's amazing. One of those people who, when you sit down and play the game of chess with him, he takes 2 hours to play, and is legitimately thinking about every move before he makes it, which was a great experience for me. So, he whooped up my behind the first time he taught me how to play and all this other stuff. A year passes, I download the chess app. I'm playing random people like 10 games a day and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
He comes back from he lives in Scotland. He comes back from Scotland, and we play one-on-one in chess, and I like beat him like 4 games out of 6 basically.
Oh,
And
wow.
Marcus is watching like, dang, this kid right here, one, has a decent amount of customer service experience. He's been in
Mhm.
sales for, at this point, almost 5 years. And him in his startup, he needed a sales engineer because the one they had was they were getting ready to leave. So he took a huge gamble on bringing me in. You were definitely more vetted. It made sense, but me, I don't know what I was I don't know what I was doing there. So I show up based on this inkling that he's like, okay, Justin's a fast learner and he's got decent sales experience. And then bring it back to what I called out before, like the sales engineering role is 60-40, 60% sales aptitude, 40%, technical understanding. And one thing that a lot of people that I've worked with or that I've, tried to get into the field is to remind them that if you have a yes mindset, you will be able to enter, any position, whether it's becoming a developer, whether it's becoming a sales engineer, whether it's becoming a carpenter. If you have the yes mindset, it's what is it? If you break down success, 5% is just having the idea, not the other 95% is actually doing it. So you can
Mm.
learn the technical aspects of whatever it is. And a lot of the times it's not as hard as you think it is. So going into this role, like I called out, him seeing my ability to learn pretty quickly and me having that yes mindset, I took a leap from what I was really comfortable in, customer service, working on the phones in the retention department, and then joining that company. And it was the beginning of an awesome journey for me. So I guess we can get into that process there, but I want to be sure I answered that question with that
No, no,
long.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did. So now can you kind of talk about the process at work in terms of how you kind of like built those skills now?
Yeah. So what I was able to do was it started off with a lot of hands-on training, like or on the job training. I was taking a lot of calls. There are account executives that I was supporting. They had a lot of demos booked up in a line for me. So this where again it was unique because even though we were a startup, we had a lot of activity, which I don't think that that's always going to be the case when you work for a startup. But fortunately, that was for me. So I had a lot of at bats, is what you would call that, for demo practice. In addition to that, while I was learning how to one be a sales engineer, because up until that point I was pretty good at customer service, yes sir, yes ma'am, you
Mhm.
know, rolling over and whatnot. But on the technical side, on the technical sales side, it's a little less. You show up with your hands, hey, how can I serve you? And more so, you're sitting beside them, you're sitting next to those people now. Now you have to take a mindset of like, hey, I belong here, and I believe the product that I'm selling you is worthy of your time. So let me talk to you like a peer versus like someone that I'm trying to, position myself to serve or whatnot. So that was one thing I had to change. A lot of at bats helped me understand that.
Mhm.
Learning the sales engineering role was understanding, most importantly, hey, you're here to show how your product solution is going to be able to solve a problem for that customer. But most importantly, um, like your product or the questions that they have or the problems that they have, they're going to ask you. Their questions are always going to be specific to their business, their operations,
Yeah.
and your sole purpose as a sales engineer, going back to active listening, is to be able to say, great, you said one or two or three keywords that were specific to you, and now you have to figure out how to bridge that gap between those keywords that they have as problems and then align them with your business value that that your product has to offer. So that's where active listening comes in, and it's going to be something that you have to practice. So at bats helped me out there. I was getting into a couple of books. Just Listen by Mark Golson is a big one for me. Being able to open
Mm.
up my ears and ask intelligent questions. Or I would say intelligent as in they were intelligent only because they would give me a chance to ask a question and then give the prospect to give me more information about something I didn't know about. Right.
Yeah.
Um, And then also I began studying for certifications. So at bats, listening to more
Wait,
business.
wait, wait. What is that? You said Abat? Look,
At
man, I'm
like
not from here, so you got to help me out.
yeah, no, for sure.
Abat? Hold on,
Yeah, at
spell it.
bats. Almost like AT and then BAT. So at bats. So
Oh,
yeah,
at bats.
yeah. Almost like you're at the plate,
Yeah,
at the
almost like I'm at bat.
yeah, at bat, exactly. Yeah, there you go. I know, hey, you a basketball star, bro. You don't have to worry about,
Yeah, I
any
want to say at
baseball
who,
analogies.
but no. Oh man.
So, but yeah, the at bats, the business books, and then there's also I began studying for those certifications. So, learning how to become a sales engineer came just naturally from being on those calls, understanding that I'm now a peer, and then trying to actively listen and bridge that gap, like I called out. But then also taking some time to start studying for the certifications that were specific to my field. So that's not always going to be the case for a lot
Okay.
of people, but that was mine for the industry. Now I have one more part to that answer. Now that I've been a sales engineer for almost 5 years, I think there's more of a formal process to, anybody can go from zero to hero. Um, and that comes with um, one, understanding your current skill sets, like what are you currently good at, or what are you currently, what are your current skill sets that you bring to your current organization or your role today? Understanding that if you do have the ability to storytell, educate, actively listen, I promise you do it. Today, even if you don't know that you do, having that acknowledgement that you do those things is another piece to the puzzle. And then once you start that role, based on those skill sets that already exist, you may not have to go out and get a certification. For me, it was cybersecurity, so I had to learn a lot about cybersecurity related concepts. But there are other fields for sales engineers that are in financial services, that are in manufacturing, that are in consulting, and all you have to do is learn how to give a presentation of a product. And it's not really technical. It's technical only because you may have to answer how these widgets or
Questions.
these
Okay.
modules work. um, but another big thing or secret behind the sales engineering role is that you're really there to be a link. Like, if you don't have an answer to the question, there's a whole development team behind you. There's a whole product team behind you. There's a whole technical account management team behind you most times. So as long as you know how to demo or demonstrate how the product works,
Works.
you'll be able to get in and have a really good run as you start that journey as a sales engineer.
So what you're saying is, if a customer asks me a technical question that I don't know, I can just be like, I'm not sure right now. I'll get in touch with my engineering team and get back to you.
100%. Even though you have to come across as a person who, it seems to be the person who knows all the answers, you have more power whenever you're upfront and you're honest. And that's where
Mhm.
you maintain that level of integrity and trust with the client. When you say, hey, that's a good question, that's something I want to follow up with you on because I want to get more details of the proper answer for you. So therefore you can have the proper workflow whenever you want to get started with that piece.
Okay. Yeah, that's so you kind of touched on this already in terms of skills, right? Like soft skills and having a good ear. If somebody was to just ask you in general, what type of skills do you think are crucial to being a good sales engineer? What would you say?
Yes, I'm going to bring it back again. It may be a bit unconventional, but I wholeheartedly believe this because I've seen a handful of engineers who came from, maybe they were users of products before, like
Mhm.
analyst or some kind of engineer. And then they became a sales engineer. And I've seen people who started from scratch, just like myself. The common denominator across the board is in those three characteristics. If you have an ability to storytell, like when I talk about storytelling, I'm not talking about like a bedtime story where I'm saying, hey, twinkle twinkle little star, or the three blind mice, that kind of situation where I'm giving you storytelling for entertainment. It's you pull it back a couple of levels.
I'm so good at that. Oh my God. I was about to tell you a story now. I was like, oh damn, but we're in the interview. All right. Keep going.
So, but stick with me. I know you still got this. So even though as humans we love stories, we've been telling stories and we narrating stories, since the beginning of time. But these kind of stories from a business perspective is all around sharing our knowledge. So maybe there was an experience that you went through yourself, or there was a customer that went through, and you're utilizing that experience to help land a plane or bridge a gap for where a new prospect is trying to understand, how do I get from point A to B? And you can sit there and you can talk about, well, I have this feature and I can do all these demonstrations or talk about all the benefits of these features and these widgets or whatnot. But it doesn't really make any sense until you connect the dot with the story or a use case. Think about Steve
Mhm.
Jobs when he did his keynote for the iPhone back in 2007. All of his examples were, based off of, let me throw you into a situation. I'm going to put you into this moment here when you have a phone and you're tired of this, this phone that has all these buttons, and then all of a sudden one of the buttons breaks and you have to take it back to the repair shop just to actually utilize the phone, you know, talking down on the BlackBerry, right? What if you had the screen, the whole nine, right? He's dropping you into an experience and sharing that knowledge through experience. That's storytelling from a business perspective. The other core characteristic is educating. Your main goal to be there as a sales engineer is to be able to educate. How can you talk about the how behind what that product is? And that
Mhm.
last piece is actively listening. So a good way to kind of summarize that is called the STEAL methodology:
Mm.
storytell, educate, actively listen. You
Wait,
can,
wait, wait, wait. Hold on. What? So, still, can you spell that acronym?
yeah, storytelling,
Okay.
educating, and active listening.
I like that. I like that. Okay. Good, good. My bad. Continue.
So that's really the STEAL methodology, and that's the underlying, characteristics that I've seen all sales engineers who are either developing good or great. They all have that in them. Take away their background, take away their skill sets, certifications, their education. If you
Mhm.
have the ability to do those three things,
Yeah.
which we do those things today. I was doing those things I used to work at Nike or Dillard's in the women's shoe section. I was using my education to actively
Mm.
list
That's how you
educate.
learn how to be smooth on the phone with customers. I see. No, I'm playing. I'm playing. I'm playing.
Like I said, many different graphics, man. I got a chance to pick from it all. So no, but yeah, I was using all of those characteristics even in a place where I wasn't a sales engineer. So there's a really good chance that you do those things today. And the rest of it is just learning. How do I learn to be more technical? There's always training on the job, and that's the hard part. But if you got the right resources and mentors, which there's always room to help talk about how to find those things. I'm always open to talk about that. You can definitely do it.
Okay. Wait, so this still methodology, is this something that is known in the actual industry, or is this like your own type of thing that you came up with?
It is actually something that I came up with. It came to me, when I was trying to figure out. So, like I said, I have a unique path to becoming a sales engineer, and I'm young, relatively young. I'm black, and I'm in the tech space, and I didn't know anything about tech before, I had this opportunity, and it's changed my life tremendously financially, and also just through in the way that I see, my ability to move throughout my career. What kind
Mm.
of person I want to become, what kind of levels or roles of leadership do I want to be able to attain. That all changed, where I can say I had a better understanding of how I can get to what I wanted just whenever I was introduced into this space. Not just because sales engineering was, my calling, but being in tech and allowing me to, work on the things that I feel like I'm pretty good at, stealing, right? It allowed me to align myself with my path a bit better. So with that being said, um, put together this program, right, to where I'm trying to get more people who are maybe not familiar with the space, maybe not familiar with tech, maybe not familiar with the world of sales engineering is. Put together a program, and it's all based around educating folks on, one, you have an opportunity to become a sales engineer. One, what is a sales engineer? Two, this is the characteristics that it focuses on. Stealing. This is not a industry thing, because again, when you look up what is a sales engineer is, you get so many different answers, so many different job requisites around what they're requiring. And I've worked for a handful of different companies now to where I can understand, that is important. But what's really important is your ability to position yourself with those three things during the interview process and also in the field while you're doing the job. Um, that's where I was able to develop this framework, and trying to pitch it out to many people so they can be a part of this field as well.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. So we will circle back to that so you can kind of share that info with the people listening. You mentioned earlier that, that you're young and black in this, tech space. That's not what the industry of sales engineers looks like, right?
No,
I was
no,
about to
not
be,
at all.
I'm about to join. But
No, no, you definitely step into a space and you're one of the only. Work for a handful of organizations and some pretty large organizations as well. And I've had a team of close to almost 100 sales engineers,
wow.
and I was one of two sales engineers. So the main demographic you would have somewhere in between the ages of, we'll say, um, 30 to anywhere to about, almost 50, 55. And they're predominantly white or Caucasian, right? And they're male. So that's really what the sales engineering role was made up of. And if you look at, again, a job posting, they're almost, they're asking for people who kind of fit that demographic based on the experience and, your education requirement. But I've seen many people come into this role who fit that standard, who fit that build, and they can do great in this. But I've also seen people like myself who I don't, on paper, I'm not anything that they're asking for.
Yeah.
But I've had an opportunity to have a great career as a sales engineer because of the things that I've been able to pull back my different perspective on how do I apply me to this thing that's different, but in a way that's going to be that I can like try to make it more efficient, or make my way more efficient in performing this role. And like I said, it always draws back to those three characteristics. If you have those three, which you most likely practice today, the rest of it is just learning how to demo, how to do a demonstration, how to talk about the how for products.
Wait, so again, the three are storytelling, active listening.
You got that. And education.
Okay. Storytelling, active listening, and education.
But you flip it around. Storytelling,
education,
and
active
active.
listening.
And that's where the methodology for the acronym comes in, STEAL. So think of it like, I storytell, educate, and active listen.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a play on words too, because I am, relatively young and I am black. Whenever I promote that I steal, that will probably be seen as a negative thing. But what I'm also trying to do is maybe flip it on its head. I can walk up and say, hey, I steal, and it's a positive.
So what's the term you are trying to reclaim that? Reclaim that word.
Take it back.
That's cool. That's cool. I support that. But on this topic though, do you ever feel imposter syndrome?
Oh, 100%. Definitely. I mean, I feel a lot more comfortable now. And that's easier for me to say because I've been doing it for a while. And I also understand that everyone's faking it till they make it. Everyone's doing that. No one, no matter how high of a position they hold inside of an organization, has it all together. They just have more at bats than you do. So it seems like they're a bit more comfortable. But there was a time whenever I would start, like back in my startup, and even when I worked at other organizations after that, I'd be sweating bullets. Before my call, I stand up and I start throwing jabs at the air, just to calm my nerves before the call, because I didn't know, what that prospect was going to ask me. I didn't know what I wasn't going to know, or how many times I was going to have to say, hey, let me get back to you. I don't know the answer to that. So a lot of that stuff comes with, practice. But again, there's a way to pragmatically go about practicing, and to upskill your ability to demonstrate, or start within a company, and then bolster your ability to learn how to do a demonstration really quickly, through a process. So fortunately, like I said, for me, I had to learn all those things from scratch, but there are things that are in place that are out there for you, the listeners of this, of this interview, to be able to upskill yourself much quicker. So imposter syndrome is definitely a thing, but the thing that keeps me sane now is that everyone's faking it till they're making it. Make it. Even prospects. Sometimes they're talking to you, they're asking you questions. Sometimes people are asking questions just to flex.
Just because, I was just about to say that.
You just want to ask questions just to show the other people on the call that they have some kind of knowledge about something. And sometimes that knowledge is
smart.
It's not, it's a dumb question. You can't tell the prospect that, of course, but it's only a dumb question because it has nothing to do with, the benefit of them or the product that you may be trying to sell. So really, it's everyone's faking it till they're making it, till they make
Wow.
it.
So
And
it
that,
sounds like patience
yeah.
with people is a really big skill that you also need for this job. Because in my head, I'm like, if someone asks me a dumb question, I might just be looking at you like, bruh, do you know the answer to that question? Anyways,
Yeah.
all right. So here, what do you enjoy most about this role and this job in general?
The best part for me is being able to just help people out. It's very generic, but like I personally, for my role, I was a victim of identity theft a few years
Wow.
back. And I had someone who tried to file taxes under my name for multiple years. So I know what it's like in the industry that I work in for cybersecurity to, have your personal identity, obstructed and have someone abuse that. Right. So I love that I get a chance to now get behind products that are meant to help save, or not save, but also give more visibility and protection and security for companies, which also give protection, security for the users, for those in that company as well. So that's what it really boils back around for me. How can I do more of just talking to people about how to do the work? And the cool thing about being a sales engineer is that I'm not having to, even though I have the engineer title in my role,
Mhm.
I'm never having to write a lick of code, which is nothing wrong with that. If you have that skill set, that's a benefit to you. But I don't have to do that. And even though I have sales in my role, I'm not the one having a code call. I'm not the one having to close the deal. I'm the
Mhm.
one that they bring in whenever you do the test drive of the car. I'm just sitting in the back. And then whenever they ask a question around the how, I give the answer and it makes everyone happy and we move on.
That makes sense because I think typically engineers aren't typically on those calls, right?
Yeah, typically on your what you would call a discovery call, where the account executive will be the one who is asking a lot of the, tell me a little bit more about why this product makes sense for now, right? Once the customer wants to see how the product works, after they have enough of the why, then's when the sales engineer would jump on the call to walk the customer through, they just talk them through it. How does this actually work?
Okay. Can you kind of like walk us through a day in the life of a sales engineer? Like today's Monday, right? Like, can you kind of walk us through what you would normally be doing on a typical Monday?
Yeah. So, depending on there's different, so just like everything else, there's different levels of sales engineering, and the different levels are based on your market that you may serve. So, an entry level sales engineer role is going to be something like an associate sales engineer or an inside sales engineer, and that role specifically is someone who is not geographically bound to the organizations or the prospects that they speak with. So I'm here in Austin, Texas. If I was an inside or an associate sales engineer, I don't have to just talk to companies based in Austin. I can talk to companies, over in Florida and also somewhere in Seattle. And because of that inside or that associate role, and because of my non geographically bound position, you typically have a higher volume of calls, right? So getting to the point, when you wake up as a sales engineer, typically happens, a couple of days in advance. But when you wake up, you look at your calendar and you don't own your calendar as a sales engineer. You just kind of have calls that just pop up. And those calls are typically your demonstration calls. So you can have calls from the time you wake up to the time, or from the time you start your day to the time you end your day from 8 to 5. Or you can have only, maybe one or two calls. It really just depends on if you're an inside sales engineer and you're covering a large geographical region, um, and also how many what you would call account executives that you support. So
Mm.
as an inside rep, if I had the whole map to support, and maybe I also was covering, the typical ratio is like one sales engineer to about 4 or 6 account executives, you can have a pretty busy day. And that just means that you wake up, you maybe have 3 to 4 demonstrations throughout the day. And that's pretty much how that process works. So in between those demonstration calls, those demo calls where you're explaining, how the product works to that prospect, you also have your typical follow-up as well. You end the meeting, the customer usually has questions in that call, questions that you don't have answers to, or there's just follow-up pieces of information you want to give more information to for the customer, and you follow up an email with, hey, thanks for the time. You asked this kind of question, and I didn't have the answer at that moment, but I was able to retrieve the answer. Here you go. So demos, follow-up emails is something else that takes place. And then the other, run-of-the-mill thing that takes place that's pretty standard, or is what we call proof of concepts. So in the sales cycle, I've already talked about how our customer can maybe click on the or submit their request for a demo from the website. So they go from the BDR to then the account executive, and then to the sales engineer, right, for the demo. So after the demo, if that goes well, the next step is to do something called a proof of concept. And when you think about concept is, an idea. So when I do the demonstration, when I walk the product, again, another way to kind of think about the demonstration is like we all, what's the last thing that you subscribe to? Like you personally, TJ, like think about some, subscription that you logged on to. What was that?
Let me see. The last thing I paid for was HBO Max.
Okay. So whenever you logged into HBO Max, did you see like any like little tool tips where it says, hey, you can click here for, these details, or
Nah, they just showed me where to pay. They just took my money.
That's right. Yeah, that's
I
right.
haven't watched anything on HBO since. But yeah, I don't know how to work the app. But yeah,
The only reason why I brought that up is because like the demo from an automated perspective with business to consumer products like HBO Max or something like that, you'll typically buy it, right? It tells you where to put the card for sure. And then after you get logged in, it may have like a little highlight to say, hey, come here to view all the most recent titles, and then click next to view this next piece. That's basically what a demonstration is. That's what I do as a sales engineer. The only difference is I'm not selling a business to consumer product. I'm selling a business to business product. And because it's a lot more features and widgets in there, you can't just use an automated, click through to be able to help people understand where the value is. So whenever I'm showing them this click through my, my demonstration, that's me explaining a concept to them. I'm giving them an idea of how this could work within your organization based on the problems that you have. And then the proof of concept is now where we say, hey, let me take this idea, why this works, and we'll put this inside of your environment. You can test it out. And then we'll walk you through, multiple calls of deployment and then testing. And that's where, the engineer comes in the sales engineering role, because you're helping someone set it up, helping someone configure the tool that you sell. And then you're also helping them understand their data with your tool as well. So that's really where the power of the SE comes in. But that's the other run-of-the-mill thing that you do throughout the day is your demonstrations. You should wake up and you just take whatever calls on your calendar, your follow-up emails for demos, and or your follow-up calls and emails for your proof of concept as well.
Man, this job sounds a lot funner than my job as a software engineer. Well, so here's what is the part about your job that you enjoyed the least?
The follow-up emails, probably.
Oh, really? Why?
Only because it could be so long. I'm a pretty thorough person. So like because I do like to help and I want them to be sure they have the right answers. And a lot of the time as as a sales engineer, your explanation behind the why can make or break the deal. So if whenever you are following up with an answer, sometimes a prospect may be asking a question and they have a general idea of how it may work. And that's why it's important for you to, if you don't know the answer straight up, not to lie, because they can sniff that stuff out. So taking the time to do more research into the right answer, and then finding the right resources internally, that can just take a long time. Sometimes it can take me anywhere from 15 to almost 45 minutes to write up one email for a customer, and it's just time consuming. But
I feel
the
that.
follow-up emails probably is the only thing that I'd call out there.
Okay. Well, here let's talk numbers, right? So you said that you being a sales engineer changed your life financially, right? So what type of ranges and pay in general can people expect to see at different stages of this, from like a entry level kind of junior role to now mid level and up?
Yeah. Let me dive into that one. And I guess one more thing I just want to call out for the last question you had, if that's all right, um, was, sometimes when you're working with your account executives, there may not be a great pair as well. So what I mean by that is,
Mm,
as a sales engineer, you are a link. You're the person who is, taking information in and then being able to pull in the right resources to give the customer what they need if you don't have the answer. And sometimes when you're working with your account executive, you guys may not agree on how to deliver said information to a prospect, or maybe you both are just on different levels in your sales journey. And that's where the soft skills and your ability to you know deal with conflict from your teammate
mm,
can be really tough to navigate as well. But that's where you have your manager and your director, your VP to help you navigate those personal relationships.
yeah,
That's but yeah, that I want to be sure I got a chance to call it out because it's important to say that
that's
even though you,
big.
yeah, you
Yeah,
show up.
because pretty much I think that those people are probably like, has there been a situation where someone didn't like make a sell and they'll blame you or just like the SE for it, essentially?
Yeah, that happened to me before for sure. I wish it didn't, but it did.
Wow.
And that's just because one, there's maybe lack of communication between you and the rep or the account executive, or there's just like a level of distrust. Like I've been in situations where I showed up to an organization where I was a newer sales engineer, and the account executive that I had been working with was more seasoned, and they were used to working with the sales engineer they had before as well. So it was already, having to get a new sales engineer is already a psychological thing that someone has to go through because they're just like, dang, is this sales engineer going to be able to answer the questions that my old one can typically answer? Is this one going to be able to actually know the product like my old one? Right. So dealing with that, we get through the process, and one of the deals we had ended up we lost that deal after the PLC, and my account executive was just like, well, you know, Justin didn't give this right information, and it caused us to lose this deal. But where I had a leg to stand on is after that, after each call, after each PLC, I was also documenting, this is this is what we were able to do. This is where we fell short from a technical perspective. So therefore it showed that the technology was, at fault, and it
Mm.
wasn't me not being able to perform my role. So I guess the moral of the story is the even though it's the most annoying part, is just the follow up. Rather it's an email, you're putting notes within the account. That has saved
Document.
me before.
Yeah, document it all.
Yeah.
But it seems like another moral though is that a big part about being like a good SE is having a good product.
Hmm. Oh
Right?
yeah. Yeah.
Because if you have a product that doesn't work,
Yeah.
yeah, good luck
Yeah.
with that one. But
100%.
yeah, so pay. Yeah, let's talk about pay.
Yeah, so when you're starting out as a sales engineer in that associate, or maybe that inside sales engineering role, you can typically expect to get at least 90K. I've seen that. I've
Oh
seen
wow.
associate maybe start a little bit lower than that, sometimes 70. But now in today's market, no matter really where you are across the world, or in the United States, I'm saying 90K base. And when we talk about pay as a sales engineer, it's broken up into variables for compensation and also base. So your base pay is your annual salary that you're going to get. You're expected to get 90K as an entry level sales engineer. So whatever that is broken into 12 months minus your taxes, that's going to be your monthly pay. And then in addition to that, there's going to be what you call an on target earning, or an OTE. That's your compensation or your commission. So you may come in at a OTE of 125,000, or a variable compensation package for 125,000, and that just means that the 90K is your base, and the difference in that will be, what's that, 35, 30, yeah, 35 or something like that, is going to be your on target earning expected to make for commission. So even though you signed a package for 125, it doesn't mean you're going to make that. But if you make sales, then you'll be able to you'll be able to reach that 125, barring that you meet your quota. So that's entry level, right? Let's talk about some
Entry
other
level
levels.
is 125. Who's Lord? I need to change jobs. uh,
So I mean, yeah, fun times for sure. You get a really good base. And then as you move up, there's different roles. As your sales engineer, you have your, associate or inside, and then you have your just regular sales engineer or solutions engineer or systems engineer. There's a bunch of names for it. But you typically can get in. This is where things get a bit hairy. As a sales engineer, because I told you before, what's really important is your ability to do those three things: story, tell,
mhm.
educate, actively listen. The job posting is important, but in your ability to show them that you can do those things in your interview process, and also when you start the job, like you can hit quite a bit. You can fool companies, and you can get a pretty good salary, without a handful of experience, or let's just say years, 10 years, 20 years behind your belt as a sales engineer. So in that next level up, I'm typically seeing, or even my experience, I'm able to get in at a 110 base, right? Um, and then that's my variable comp was like 140 and stuff like that. So 110 for base, and then like another 30K for OTE, right? So I'm gonna keep going. The trick, or not even the trick, but when you think about your space in tech, and you know this, TJ, like what's most important. I think you even taught me this, way back when. It's just like you get within the company, you ride it out for about 2 years, and then you figure out, what's going to be the next jump for you. Not because that company isn't good enough for you to stay, or not because that company doesn't offer you more, but if there's an opportunity for you to increase your salary 20, 30, sometimes 50% more, um, just by going to another company, by doing the same thing, why not do it? Right?
Mhm.
You're only benefiting yourself in the long run, especially if that new company is offering you things like, stock options and things like that. So, now I'm at the point where I've jumped a couple of times from a few organizations. Some of them have been because I felt like it was the right move for me. I didn't see any further development in that organization. And then some of the jumps I've made has been because I've had other colleagues who are just like, hey, there's this new company that's around right now. And, I think that they're on a really good wave to, maybe go public. They're a startup right now, but they're going to go public one day. And you can cash out from on the back end from RSUs or stock options. So that's been my journey. A couple of years, and then I jumped, and now I've been able to reach over 150 as a base, and then my variables for compensation or commission is over 200 as well, 200K as well.
Let's go. I love that. I love that, man. Good stuff. So now look, so for anyone that is actually interested in making the career switch to becoming a sales engineer, let's say that you were to start from scratch again. Knowing what you know now, like how would you go about that journey?
Yeah. So when I would, seek mentorship, um, the reason why I call that mentorship is important because, you become a sales engineer usually by accident. A lot of people that I know,
Uh,
they didn't go to school to become a sales engineer, nor did they know that a sales engineer was a role, right? It sounds like a made up position. You're putting sales and engineering in one title. So finding someone who is already a sales engineer would be a major benefit for two reasons. One, that could be an opportunity for mentorship. And I mean mentorship as in saying, hey, this is kind of what the role, this is what you can come to expect, right? And then the other piece is if you know someone, that's typically how you find opportunities to become a sales engineer, because either
mm,
there's opportunities in their company that are opening up. The sales engineering role is a very high in demand, it's a very, very high in demand position. So either at their company or different companies, they can get you plugged in from that perspective. And then aside from that, mentorship is just, I don't even have to say it's important to find or go to a program. There's programs that exist out there that are, that put you through a 12-week course, right? To where you
yeah.
learn how to demo or do a demonstration and stuff like that. And those are beneficial. Or there's books that exist out there. Those are beneficial, but there's nothing like, you know, being like, there are things you can pull back behind just giving a demo, which is how do I structure learning how to talk about a product? Like that piece right there is most important. And then you'll be able to give a demo for any company, very technical or non-technical based on your process. And what I've seen for some of these programs that exist is, they'll take you through these technical products and teach you how to give technical demonstrations without helping you understand the mindset to learning how to do the demo, like a demo in general, versus learning how to do a demo about a technical product and things like that. So that
I see.
bringing it up one more level. But knowing that, being able to understand that piece is going to be, or finding resources out there to help you, get the insights behind the demo. Behind the demo is going to be important as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it seems like mentorship is kind of like the biggest thing that you would change if you could go back. So do you mentor people, or, like how, like, yeah. So, pretty much I guess here, do you have any like shout outs, recommendations, or just kind of like anything that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah. So currently I do mentor people who are looking to break into the space for sales engineering. One, to help them understand what it is, and then two, help them find where their next, or their new opportunity can be for a sales engineer. So yeah, like you called out, that is, if I could go back, I would find a mentor and I would, try to get under them and just stick to the script from that perspective. But I have put together a program that's based around just helping people understand their ability to understand that, they're still inside of their whole process today, and then what they can do to apply those current skills to a cell engineering role that exists today, that they may be able to apply to. So therefore you can move forward and start that journey.
Awesome. And how can people get in touch with you and just kind of like learn more about mentorship through, with you in general?
Yeah, so I've got some content on Instagram and also TikTok. You can find
TikTok.
me in both places at Justin the SE.
Jesse. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I will have all of your information in the description of the video as well. So that's cool. Well, thanks a lot, Justin. It was good. It was really good having you, catching up again. Man, I hate that I missed you in Austin, man. I would have loved to have done this live. So
I know. Next time though, we'll figure it out. So I'm not in Dallas while you're in Austin. We can be the same place at the right time.
yeah. All right, man. Thank you.
Thanks, TJ.